The following is a presentation of unidentified entertainment and 22nd century radio. Manassas, Fairfax, Washington, D.C.
Exopolitics and ufology, religion and science, time and space. Hosted by Mike Smith.
I'm in the process of going to get fuel for my gas.
Do you look in the sky a lot?
You're listening to Time and Space on 22nd Century Radio.
Do you look in the sky a lot?
Find us on the internet, timeandspace.us. And don't forget, download our free smartphone app.
Be interesting. Welcome back one more time. This is timeandspace.us. Mike Smith here with author Mack Maloney. And Mack, you were talking a little while ago about chemtrails, so I figure I have to tell you this story and ask you what you can tell me about chemtrails and what the subject's about. A couple of years ago, again, I'm not somebody that would ever claim to have seen UFOs or anything like that. I had stopped for an appointment and came out of this building and was getting in my truck. And as I got in the truck and started to pull out of the parking lot, I felt this very bizarre sort of pressure almost. I can't really describe it. But it was the type of thing where almost it felt like maybe a bomb had gone off or something really unusual like that. And I caught myself kind of cowering in my truck. Then out of the corner of my eye, it looked like an invisible hand had come out of nowhere and drawn this line up the windshield of my truck with a black Sharpie. Almost. It was a very bizarre feeling, like I'm looking at this, how did this happen? Well, it took a second to process whatever it was, and I realized that this wasn't something on my truck at all, but rather a line that had just appeared across the sky from as far you could see in one horizon. You would literally have to turn like I just did to look in the other direction to see the other end of it. As straight as a razor blade, as black as the ink that would have just come out of an actual Sharpie marker. I have no clue what this was. However, I recently, because of a couple of articles that had come out because of the Joseph Farrell book, and because of other things that I had found, I had been talking to a former Air Force flight mechanic that I work with, who had some pretty interesting observations. We were talking about the specs. In fact, this article that had just appeared last week on a government report on secret flying saucer program was made available. This particular version was off of Fox News, but it was apparently something found in the National Declassification Center in College Park, Maryland, a 114-page document from 1956 that documented an actual, this Avro car project.
Canada,
right, exactly. Now, there'd been other stuff in Farrell's book and some other pieces. Rob Swiatek had sent me some information. He wasn't impressed about the news story because a lot of that information's been out for a while. But the key thing that always stuck in my head was like these Rex Heflin photos from many years ago. UFOs that would accelerate away at high speed would leave these black marks, sometimes a ring, sometimes a bit of a streak. That's clearly what I saw. Whatever it was that went over left this black trail going. The most bizarre aspect of the whole thing, really two of them, was one that eventually it started to dissipate in the air and just kind of drifted along like any, contrail would from a jet. But that as it drifted away, I was sort of near Dulles Airport. An aircraft actually came in and made a banking turn to head back towards the runway and actually looped around this sort of smoke trail. The other thing that was very bizarre about it was a few minutes later, I could see that there was a second one. So whatever it was two of whatever this was going by. When you look at the specs on some of these things, you're talking about 100,000 feet flight ceiling, going Mach 4, things like that.
Right.
You wouldn't even see the craft go over you.
Right.
I don't know what I saw. I have no idea. It shook me up a little bit. I was thrown off by it. What is this discussion? What are chemtrails, and what are you guys sort of talking about there? I've peripherally touched on the subject before and had to ask.
Well, what we had the discussion about on the radio show was that it got to the point where they were talking that when people see contrails overhead, that are left by any jet aircraft that are, up more than, let's say, 20,000 feet, depending on the weather, whether it's cold or not, people have seen them, for years. Well, there's a group of people who believe that what you are actually seeing not airliners, but secret government aircraft that are flying over the country, and those contrails you see are actually dropping chemicals on us to do something to us.
Okay.
Someone actually brought up the fact that it might be chemicals that are giving us all allergies so they can sell more Claritin. And I'm not kidding you.
No, I know you're not.
Or that these chemicals are driving us insane or turning us into zombies,
Sure.
or it's going to be some way for the government to control us, so on and so forth. So, and I have to go back to, I think this is just utter foolishness, because I have to go back to this whole kind of what we were talking about with the secret NASA, German Nazi UFOs, and to my argument was that, all right, for people to see these planes flying over, and if they're not airliners, but you're seeing these contrails all the time, but they're not airliners, then number one, where are the airliners' contrails? Where do they suddenly go? But number two, that means you would have to have a vast fleet of airplanes that apparently look like airliners,
that are rigged to do
that
this
are rigged
type of
to
activity.
kind of do what these small airplanes do over cornfields.
Yeah.
Where are these airplanes? Where do they land? Where do they get filled up with the chemicals? Who makes the chemicals? Do the guys in the chemical company, are they in on it?
Right.
Are all the pilots in it? Are where are these airports at all these, what would have to be hundreds of airplanes landing, and why are they doing this? And once again, it's you have to go, they just can't exist out of pure air. You have to have, for such a program to be going on, thousands of people would have to be involved.
Yeah, right.
Hundreds of huge airplanes.
Right.
Is every air traffic controller in the United States in on it because they would see these airplanes, It's the same thing as the 9/11 thing, where people seem to want to believe that the 9/11 towers were blown up. Airplanes went into the 9/11 towers. That's why those buildings fell. If you want to believe that they were blown up, then you have to believe that a force of explosive experts were in those buildings for 3 months before.
That's right.
Hundreds of people planting explosives.
Rigging, running cables, running wires, detonators.
It's foolishness. It's foolishness.
Yeah.
And the 9/11 thing really bothers me, and I get a lot of emails about this.
I'll bet.
Is because I truly believe that if you adhere to this, that a plane didn't really hit the Pentagon, and that the buildings were blown up at the same time airliners hit them, you're denigrating the people who died that day.
Sure.
2,000 people died. 2,500 people died in the towers. 300 firemen, 100 cops. Okay, they were in there saving people's lives, and to come up with this kind of nonsense that that they were blown up instead, you really do a disservice to those people. You really do. And that's just part of the noise. I don't know why people want to believe that, but they do believe it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that around. And I just think that chemical trails, stuff like that, I think it's just all nonsense. I think that it distracts us from really getting to the bottom of a lot of these things that we should get the bottom of, and one of them is the UFO problem.
Right. Mac, I really appreciate your time. It was great to finally get to meet you and chat with you.
Same here.
Really, really super. Our show is called timeandspace.us. Again, just a couple quick plugs for your books, UFOs in Wartime. You can find on Kindle. It's a great book. Please get out and read that. And Beyond Area 51 coming out next summer, we think, right?
Yep,
and then the radio shows again. You said you're on Encounters?
Yep. We're on every Wednesday night, 7:30 to 9 o'clock Eastern Time, called Mack Maloney's Military X-Files. And also the first Sunday of every month at 8 o'clock, Encounters with my cohorts in crime. They're all on the Global Radio Alliance network. You can just Google Global Radio Alliance and find out when we are on. And we have a lot of fun doing both radio shows, and we come up with a lot of interesting topics. So, so I hope you listen, and I hope you enjoy the books.
Well, thanks for being a guest on our show. We really appreciate it.
Glad
Mack
to do it.
Maloney. This is timeandspace.us, and we'll chat with you again in just a few minutes. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks very much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Let me just call my wife real
Find us on the internet, timeandspace.us. And don't forget, download our free smartphone app.
Do you look in the sky a lot?
You're listening to Time and Space on 22nd Century Radio.